Hey, yeah, what? Grab your bootstraps, yeah, let's scale your growth. Here's the truth, Jack. We'll reach the globe, unveil the
Tanya,
notes.
what
Learn
the
to pivot,
fuck?
earn your digits, won't burn, you'll get it. See, this is factual. Funds will show, learn to flow with Candid Capital.
This is a Candid Capital interview. In these episodes, we host industry business professionals involved in the global tech ecosystem to discuss various topics related to tech, global economy, and building sustainable businesses and investments. Welcome to the Candid Capital Podcast. In this episode, we are diving into the evolving intersection of Web3 blockchain infrastructure and the economy of things with David Palmer, Chief Product Officer of Pairpoint at Vodafone. Welcome, David. Thanks for joining.
Josh, it's a pleasure to be with you. Long time in the making this podcast, but I'm glad we finally managed to align schedules so we can have this discussion. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, this is great. I saw you at Mobile World Congress last month or earlier this month on a panel session discussing telecom and blockchain, and it seemed like there was a lot of areas to cover, and we had to have you on.
Pleasure. Looking forward to it.
So before we kind of get into the decentralized systems and diving into further into the world of Web3, I like to start these things with the origin story. So kind of like, what got you into tech, entrepreneurship, and more specifically, Web3?
Yeah, so I've always been into tech. So I'm one of those individuals. If you look at my academic background, I started off in economics, did an MBA, then did a master's in business information systems. And from that point, and I also started programming in 1979, right, on a Tandy TRS-80 computer in BASIC and machine code. So it's always been there. But I think what really started to really get me back into it was two things. So, in telecoms, I've always been, I'm one of those unlucky people or lucky people. I always seem to be on the cutting edge technology. So I've worked on fiber when that was new. I worked on DSL when that was new. I worked on satellite broadband and communications when that was new. And then, 14 years ago, at Vodafone, I started working on this Internet of Things platform. It was called Machine to Machine in those days. And it was all about how you could connect devices and how these connected devices can produce data, which could really change and make business models more efficient. So that's sort of the background I got into. And then more recently, in 2014, I started getting into blockchain specifically. And following that, really got into smart contracts. I was fascinated with smart contracts and the Ethereum project. So that's it. And I've been, because that was a personal hobby, it was something that was really personal to me. Part of what I started to do was think about, okay, how can this new fascinating blockchain technology, which can provide trust, which can provide security, which can provide tamper-proof timestamps, and now smart contracts. How can that apply to the industry I'm working in, right? Which is telecommunications and Internet of Things, and that is really the story of how Pairpoint by Vodafone, which is the first Web3 platform, a Web3 based platform that's been launched by Vodafone, and I believe one of the first Web3 platforms. Based platforms in the world by an enterprise was founded. It was founded by me sort of looking at my personal side, saying that this blockchain technology is really interesting. Some of the things it can do, I think can revolutionize industry. How does it help my industry? And then starting to apply that in terms of a POC and in terms of evangelizing, the potential of blockchain internally in Vodafone.
How did you do that? I mean, that's the biggest challenge. Blockchain has not been really received that well, at least historically. I mean, maybe now it's more popular, but I mean, how did you do that?
So it was interesting, right? Because when I started to look at blockchain for telecommunications, you go and you do a search right on the internet, and there was like only 4 returns, right? There was only four. I think it was China Mobile, Orange, AT&T, and there was just some headlines. I can probably still find the slide where there was only 4 things being done, and they were proof of concepts, and they were, nothing was really happening. But one of the positive things about Vodafone is that it does foster innovation, and it does foster entrepreneurship. So at the time I started looking at this, I found out I wasn't the only one. And there were 4 or 5 people, a group within Vodafone, who were blockchain evangelists looking at different use cases. And in fact, we had 4. There were 4 use cases that we looked at in the business. One was blockchain for Internet of Things, right, which is where Pairpoint came from. The other one was blockchain for roaming, because in roaming you have a lot of telecom partners who don't trust each other. And when customers roam on each other's networks, you have to settle. So that's something, and that actually went live as well. The other one was contracts management, and the fourth one was digital identity, and how you could pair digital identity with the telecommunications and the phone number. So those were the 4 things. And we had 3 really significant people in the business that we had to convince, and who actually ended up championing blockchain in the business. One was Ninian Wilson, who's the director of procurement for Vodafone, and he actually turned around and said, "Look, I'm excited about this. I want to take 4 blockchain proof of concepts in the entire Vodafone through to minimum viable product." So he was absolutely critical in that. The other one was a guy called Johan Weiberg, who was the chief technology officer of Vodafone Group at the time. And I used to wait for him outside his office and say, "Blockchain, blockchain, blockchain." And his significance was that he came at it from the business side. And he said, "Look, Dave, don't talk about the technology. Let's look at how this could be applied to business," and really supported, Pairpoint. It was called Digital Asset Broker then, through to get the funding to start it. And the other one was George Bento, right, who I now work with, and is the CEO of Pairpoint. And at the time, he was CTO of the IoT division, and he sort of allowed us to play around with the technology and get it to a stage. And when we got it to a stage where there was something there, he also helped champion it through to the business. So those are 3 important people, who really made it possible, but made it possible because they took the time, at a time when it wasn't popular, as you're saying, to understand the technology and understand the potential. And as an organization, Vodafone gambled on that potential, and saw it through. So that was pretty significant. But there are some practical things. So there was a cycle. So when crypto prices, and you're in a bull market, people listen to you. When you're in a bear market, I told you so. I told you. But it leveled off, and we managed to make a business case for the IoT blockchain use case, which is now Pairpoint, previously known as Digital Asset Broker, right through the business. So we managed to do a POC within IoT, and we managed to look at use cases, which was really important. And we managed to look at the business case, right? What's the potential for this to earn revenue? So, of the 3 use cases, or 4 use cases that we had, IoT was the one with the positive revenue forecast, right? Because essentially Vodafone had 175 million connected devices on its IoT platform, and we were able to have a business case where we could add a subscription revenue by making those devices able to transact with each other. Right.
Those other 3 cases, did they go by the wayside, or are they still under development?
I think it's just different phases, different speeds, right? So contracts management is really an internal case. The roaming case went live in a consortium, right? So that went live, and there's a colleague of mine, Manuela Godek, who is as passionate as I am, and really pushed that through. And the other one, digital identity, was one where we all know that digital identity is a great use case. We all know that self-sovereign digital identity is a great use case, but it was before its time. So I fully expect that as we move forwards, the intersection and cross-section of mobile phone numbers and some of the things we can do to know your customer and anti-money laundering that we have in the telco infrastructure will start to merge with digital identity and self-sovereign models.
Yeah, that's one I'm kind of, kind of a little bit interested to see how that one turns out, because it reminds me of there's this book, I think it's called Onboarding a Billion Users, and
I've heard of it.
it's about the Indian Aadhaar system, where they basically just all they provided was proof you are who you say you are, and it kind of created this huge cascading effect on their economy, at least from the perspective of this book. And if we could figure something out like that, blockchain wise, I think it would be like immense.
Yeah, I think it's immense because I mean, for example, I mean, digital identity didn't die because part of what we do in Pairpoint is to provide interoperable, trusted digital identities for devices, right? So that devices can have identities and credentials like payments, so that they can actually transact with each other and other infrastructure. So we've taken it and applied it to devices, and it was needed for devices because the IoT industry was growing. I think there's over 20 billion IoT devices now, and this is how business models are fueled. But the data wasn't being used, right? 75% of the data wasn't being used. And that is because it wasn't available across ecosystems, right? It was only available largely to the owner of the device who only used a bit of it. And what we're doing is unlocking the potential of that data to cross ecosystems. And now with AI coming, unlocking the potential of that data in business to be trusted and be fed into large language models, or even student models associated with large language models, so that business data can start to power the next generation of AI, and that is pretty critical. So digital identity is absolutely there. And you think about it as you move into online virtual reality um, environments, right? So the metaverse hasn't died; it's still there. And just to introducing myself, I'm actually the author of a book called The Business of the Metaverse, which is available on Kogan page, and was published last year. But in that book, you start to look at the role of the metaverse being AI on Earth, right? As we have all of these AI agents and we have all these agentic models, how are we going to interface with it? We're going to interface with it online, and a lot of that, where it starts to be immersive, will be using mixed reality, virtual reality, or augmented reality. So how are we going to trust the AI, right? How are we going to trust if we have agents operating on our behalf, or businesses have agents and this data crossing? How are we going to trust that? It's dynamic. You need dynamic trust and dynamic authentication of identity credentials, and that's where blockchain is absolutely critical. Because in a position like that, you can't. There's no one body that's going to be big enough, and there's no processes large and fast enough to process everybody's credentials in real time across different platforms. That's where self-sovereign models comes in, and that's where blockchain comes in. So you have ledgers that are connected, where credentials can be issued and trusted, and you can have, as you are hinting there, have zero knowledge proof type models where you can say, okay, this person's over 25, this is David, he is in that location, etc. And this is going to power the next generation of online interactions. And it's all going to be based on digital identity. Now, what I would say, and what I outline in the book, is that actually, when you look at the speed with which technology needs to evolve, maybe linking the digital identity to the phone number means that if something happens online, or a device does something online, that you can link it to an organization or a person, so you have recourse to legal relations, right? You can link it to a jurisdiction, etc. So that's where the phone number comes in, because that's what the telco industry's been doing all these years, which is making sure that the phone number has some recourse, right? That is linked to something. So that was what we were saying, is that if you link the identity to the phone number becomes a credential in your identity. There's a lot we can do to move quickly.
Well, first off, I would just like to say that I'm a huge fan of the metaverse, just in general, the concept. I think the first season of this show, I try to bring it up at any opportunity. Uh, And I think if anything, because I meet mostly non-believers. Not that it's something you have to believe in, but
Yeah,
that there's opportunities outside of gaming. But if any of the world that the Valley people are suggesting will exist as a result of I think it produces an even greater case for metaverse.
absolutely.
Because if everything is so low cost and free and you don't need to go to work or whatever, how are you going to spend your time? And then the other thing is, there's a side of it of, well, I could just go on holiday and do stuff. But if you can total recall your brain, you don't actually need to go anywhere and you still have all that experience or memory. Or if you want to go into a virtual world that you can't tell the difference between the real world. So, I mean, I could see it working. Um,
Absolutely. I mean, there's some interesting concepts, right? So when I looked at the metaverse, I know we're sidetracking a bit, but we'll get back on track. But when I looked at the metaverse and the impact on the metaverse economics on industries, you look at something like education. What does the metaverse do, right? If you look at the Harvard of education, right? At the moment, why is Harvard education so expensive and so coveted? It's limited in supply. And part of that limited supply has been, the need to physically attend Harvard University, right? And some of that, you can do some online, but there's some courses where you need immersiveness, you need interaction, etc. The metaverse provides one characteristic which is important. It removes geography. The other characteristic is that it provides immersiveness, and it will be as if you're there, right? So you look at that and you apply that to Harvard education. What does it do? You have near zero marginal cost of increasing supply of Harvard courses because they can be done online. And they'll be done by AI, right? AI agents will be part of it as you go on, right? So there's zero marginal cost of increasing supply. And because it removes geography, you have an increased demand, right? What is the economic impact? Higher supply and lower price, right? So that's actually liberating because other things remaining equal, right? There can be better education for more people around the world, right? They don't need to travel to it. And you look at that on other industries, and the metaverse, could potentially, start to reset the boundaries of opportunity,
well, I
right?
think also, the metaverse, like blockchain years ago, is that it was the skepticism came from it being an unfinished product. It was super new. It has still got a long ways to go, and the iterations get better and better. And it kind of mirrors some of the comments about transaction speeds, on blockchain networks and whatnot. But that's because it was so early. It takes time to kind of build the capacity in order to be able to kind of make those, I would say, statements potentially. And so I think like when it comes to, Web3, blockchain, metaverse, however you want to put it, it's still super early if you really think about it in comparison to, the tried and true tech, you could call it. Um, and then like for what you're doing with Pairpoint and just again talking about getting back to the blockchain, um, so does that product go on top of an IoT service? Like, for example, there are all these different platforms for IoT, but they're not really offering, I would say, sort of the truth component. They might be providing a service that has to do with monitoring, or maybe they're doing some type of cybersecurity within their platform. Does yours kind of integrate into that, or is yours a standalone for IoT services just through Vodafone?
No, so that is part of the reason why Pairpoint was stripped out of the main Vodafone and became a sort of subsidiary startup by itself, is because it works across all telecoms, right? So it works across all types of connectivity and all operators, right? So it sits on top, and is there to bring together these devices, right? Part of what blockchain can do, one of the core characteristics of blockchain in business is trust, right? In trust that brings interoperability, which brings the ability to do things dynamically, knowing that there's a recourse to settlement, right? Which is based on the ledger and can be executed by smart contracts. So essentially, what we're doing is three things. Number one, we provide a digital identity and some cryptography, like a digital signature on top of the connectivity. So devices are connected, but they also become able to sign, and they have an identity, right? And that identity will include credentials like where they can roam, as well as payment credentials. The second thing we do is to allow devices to trust each other using that identity and using the verification of the credentials. The third thing we do is then allow the devices to transact with each other. Now, obviously, one of the key things that those devices who have an identity, who can interoperate across different ecosystems, one of the key things is data, right? And as I say, as we move into the world of AI, the public data is largely used now, and the next era becomes business data. If you want AI in business, then you need business data. Now, this unlocks that because the business data is coming from IoT devices, right? That's a large proportion of it will come from IoT devices. So this is going to unlock that, but only because blockchain is able to connect all of these devices together, so that they can interoperate, so they can trust, and we can use the automation of smart contracts to orchestrate things real time.
So with your process of doing it, is it your data or is it your client's data?
But that's the beauty of it, right? Previously, there was a lot of arguments about whose data it is, right? So if you take a vehicle, the auto manufacturer will claim that some of the data is theirs. The fleet company who bought the vehicle will say some of the data is theirs. The driver will say some of the data is theirs. We as the connectivity providers will say some of the data is ours, and it goes on, right? But the beauty of blockchain and smart contracts is that you're able to assign ownership of the data across different parties, right, in a smart contract. So you can get an agreement as to who's going to get what split for the data. So for once, you're able to actually get whole portions of the data and reward the data owners and data generators for that. And that is the power of the smart contract, and you can do it dynamically. So it's actually unlocking a real problem that existed, for example, in the automotive industry.
Yeah, that potentially could make data more valuable, actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So when I was at the session that you're at Mobile World, there was a comment on the stage, and I don't think it was from you, or maybe it was. I don't remember who, but a comment was made, if I'm not correct here, is that blockchain hasn't really lived up to the vision. And I kind of just wanted to go down that path a little bit, because most of what's discussed about it, at least in the mainstream, is anything to do with decentralized finance or in the finance space. And so you've kind of described some use cases, but from your point of view, do you think it's going to go in that direction? Or do you think we're going to be kind of stuck with who's trading which cryptocurrency?
Yeah, good point. It probably came from me. It could have come from a number of us. But yeah, I've got views on this. So I think the first thing I'll say is I absolutely agree with you. Right, blockchain is still in its infancy. If you look at you know Bitcoin, when Bitcoin came around, Ethereum came around, and other protocols and layer twos, and then we had the sort of blockchain spring of 2020. This is really real infancy, and I think the technology and the impact of the technology has been immense, given the amount of time that it's been here, and given the amount of resistance from a regulatory point of view and compliance point of view that we've had. So I'll say that, and you look at the crypto market, depending on which day you measure it, it's trillions, right? Absolutely immense, the impact it's had. However, part of the point that I was making was that if you look at a technology which can bank the unbanked, technology which can be inclusive to people in developing countries, it can be inclusive to people from deprived socioeconomic groups. I've not seen enough projects, and there have been some started, but I've not seen enough projects which, is getting, people banked, which is getting people, business opportunities, getting people in the workforce. Where I think blockchain can really reset the boundaries of opportunities, especially when you start combining it with AI. You start, looking at the potential of wallets and the potential of decentralized finance, not just to have a bear market where people can make money, but to really allow people in developing countries to have opportunities to earn incomes, right? And I think there's a lot of those projects that I would have expected to have happened already that haven't. But I think it will come in time, right? I think blockchain needs to secure its position. I do believe, though, that there is a danger in the cryptocurrencies that it just becomes an investment tool, or let me buy it because it's going to go up. Whereas actually the token of a crypto project, you should really be looking at the project, and you should say, and do I believe in this, right? Does this align with my beliefs? Does the project mean something to me? Do I believe this project's going to be successful? But actually, it's just, do I think that token's going to go up? Or is it not? Shall I buy it to make money? And that's not what I think the movement was about. And I think that is a danger to blockchain. Also, we haven't seen enough real live implementations in business. I think Pairpoint's one of the few. There are some others. But I think a lot of that was because public blockchains, you had issues with GDPR, so privacy. You had other issues associated with it, sanctions issues where banks couldn't invest, couldn't pay gas fees. And I think technologically, with account abstraction and other things, you're starting to get over those hurdles, and public blockchains are becoming faster. They're becoming more trusted, and I think that will make the difference. So I think that an immense amount has been done with blockchain and cryptocurrencies to this date, and I think the impact is enormous, right? But I do believe that the next phase will be, real projects in real business, changing real lives, and that's when I really believe we'll see the true value come through.
Do you think that the technology has been kind of, let's say, shored up enough that for where it makes sense, private entities would do it internally to kind of build these chains, kind of like how you're describing with Pairpoint? Like, you want to have an IoT system, and you want to know certain things about it that blockchain offers. And so are you seeing it more of like private enterprises bringing it in because they found a use case, or do you think this is going to come from the outside, kind of with the established Web3 community building products and just competing to kind of displace what currently exists?
It's a good question. I think it's going to be both, right? So I think what the Web3 startups have done very well is to lead with innovation. Right? The kind of things they're doing is way ahead in some areas of established business, and they're faster, and they're very innovative. But if you look at the actual impact they've had on real business, it's been limited. And it's been limited because, and I think I made this point at Mobile World Congress, because there's been a come to me sort of stance, meaning we'll build it, come and use our wallets, log onto our platform, and that's not the way that technology really works in business, right? If you look at business, a lot of what we see now is built on what you call a service-oriented architecture, right? Businesses speak the sort of language of APIs, right? Where essentially you have services from different technology platforms which could be mashed together to form solutions. Even telecommunications is generating APIs. Right? You've got open banking APIs, so banking can be embedded. Telcos can be, telecom services can be embedded. everything can be embedded, and you haven't seen that from the blockchain community until now, right? So what's happened is you've had, okay, we want to be completely decentralized, come over and do everything with us, and that's not going to happen simply because the big enterprises and banks have spent years building up their systems, and they've forward invested hundreds of billions, and it's just not going to happen that way. So I think now you sort of have blockchain as a service, wallets as a service, tokenization as a service, which can be mashed into existing solutions, means that you start to get the best of both worlds, and that powers technologies and solutions that we use now. And eventually, in the future, will be a wait and see. I think obviously AI has changed the game massively since crypto and the big blockchain projects have come along. And what is meaning is that businesses are having to go through accelerated digital transformation. Right? It's not a choice; they have to. To do that, they're going to be looking for the best convergence of different technologies, right, that can support that transformation with AI. And that's where I think that Web3, if it makes itself available, will be a part of that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like some of the, I guess, larger, successful, maybe if you want to measure it that way, early on Web3 companies were offering some type of bridge, for the most part. Like, even if you look at Coinbase, they weren't doing what they're doing now. They weren't Web3 initially. They were really just an exchange.
Yeah,
Um,
centralized exchange.
yeah, and they were making it easier for regular people to trade and promising a certain level of compliance and safety. They didn't start getting into, all the wallet stuff and now building base until relatively recently. So now they're more of a Web3 company than they were before, but they kind of started as a bridge. Um, if you think
No,
about
I agree totally with that. When you can get blockchain Web3 applications on your iPhone, in numbers, and you don't even know it's Web3, that's when you know you're successful, right? When you're not talking about the technology.
well, it's not like there wasn't a wasn't it Facebook or Meta that attempt was going to do
Oh,
their own.
Libra.
That
Yeah.
got shut down because it would have been so disruptive. It would have 100% been disruptive if
Yeah.
that vision had actually come to pass. It wouldn't have been good for the groups they're displacing. And like a lot of, I would say, blockchain technology displaces the people that regulate stuff. Um,
It gets rid of the intermediaries, right? And the whole industry is based on intermediaries. And that's why it needs to be part of a transformation, because yeah, I mean, a lot of that has already happened in different industries. So you look at some of the over the top platforms. You look at Uber. You look at Airbnb. Some of these hugely successful platforms have displaced a lot of intermediaries, right, and lowered the cost and improved the experience. But they had to exist alongside to begin with.
no, I
But eventually, the value shows, right, and you have the transformation.
Yeah, so for AI and blockchain, if you could maybe kind of give your opinion on how AI is going to change blockchain and what the relevance of blockchain could be to somebody who's working in AI. So kind of
Yeah.
like
So, so,
both directions there.
so I see three main entities. Well, four, but I'll talk about three. Right? So you've got AI, yeah, which is intelligence, which is going to change everything. It's already starting to change everything. And then you've got blockchain, which is really the glue, right, which can bring trust and dynamic trust. Uh, and then you've got on the other side the metaverse, which provides the environments for the new AI with trust to interact with people, right, and start to change and automate our business processes and our business interactions with people, and and those are the three things which I think go together. And from the Pairpoint angle, you also have as part of that whole conversation devices, right? As we move to more and more of an AI world, where you have large language models which are populated by data, and AI agents, which are combing different data and using going between different models and different agents with different expertise. You got to ask yourself, where is that data coming from? Where's the data going to come from? Right? It's going to come from IoT devices, right, and business enterprise systems. And you got to say, well, how am I going to trust that data? Blockchain will be a key part of providing the trust for that, and the means to transact it, and the means to port it across different ecosystems. And then when you look at the metaverse just becomes the environment where you can transact. So I think those four things, I believe, are the recipes for accelerated change, and all four of them will be critical for this accelerated AI economy that we're seeing. But I believe blockchain is the glue, right? You mentioned it at the beginning. Right? You've got deep fakes on another level. Right? You can do you don't know what's real anymore. So agents will need to have an identity, right? And the data that they're using will need to have an identity, and all of those things will need to be authenticated in different environments across different ecosystems. It cannot be one. There cannot be one entity and one database and one ecosystem that can do all of that. It's going to be impossible. You need decentralization, and the decentralized technology with those features and capabilities is blockchain. So I believe blockchain will be absolutely critical. And you've got to remember, everything has a transaction associated with it, right? AI agents will be owned, they'll be financed, they'll be generating income, right? They'll be splitting that income, they'll be doing that across different ecosystems. How are you going to port the value? How are you going to finance the agents? Tokenization, right? Being able to tokenize and carry value and port it across different digital environments will be the role of blockchain, right? It becomes the sort of new financial infrastructure, merging with things like open banking as well, at least in the short term, that powers this new digital world, right? We need a new digital infrastructure for a new digital world. And that means we need more intelligent telco systems, we need intelligent devices, we need dynamic trusts, and we need dynamic intelligence. And those sort of things are what we're building now, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. New systems for a new world. I mean, I've often stated that digital transformation is not as it's described. We've done digital replication.
Yeah.
But to transform something, like just because you no longer have paper and you have a screen, that's digital replication. And I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of that versus actual digital transformation. Because if you look at how even DeFi works versus traditional finance, it's completely different. In terms of how the system operates. Getting it closer is just really the bridging function to get it accepted potentially.
Exactly. Exactly. I know. I agree totally. And yeah, you're absolutely. But I think we are on the cusp with these technologies that we have. Just I was in Silicon Valley not too long ago, and the impact of AI coding assistance on the development industry is dramatic already, right? Already, and it's at a fairly immature stage. So I think this transformation, or certainly the elements for real transformation are there now. But it is going to be about convergence. Right? It's going to be about convergence and vision. Right? I was sort of on the plane coming back today, and I sort of had in my head, people don't appreciate the visionaries. Right? You're a visionary. I'm a visionary. There's loads of visionaries who can see a version of the future. And if you went back and you look at life before Google, life before Airbnb, life before Uber, life before all of these messaging platforms that we have that have changed our lives, and then you take a look at the value of these companies. Had the visionary been able to tell people 10, 15 years ago to invest in Nvidia or invest in Uber or these companies, people would have made a lot of money, because not everybody can see the future. Nobody saw it. Right? Nobody saw Netflix when Blockbusters was it. So I think the visionaries in this new world that's evolving will become really important, right? Not just in terms of the direction you can go, but in terms of being able to position for value.
Well, I mean, we had a flip phone on television like 40 years before it actually ended up in our hands, but people
Mm.
still couldn't see it. It still took that long.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
I don't know the exact, number of years, but Captain Kirk's little flip phone, like we
Oh,
those were not everywhere until the 90s. And so like the filming of that, there's quite a distance between those two areas. But I think it's hard for people to kind of vision a world they're not familiar with, you know.
exactly.
Um, you're raised from somebody from a different time in a period of time that's never going to exist for a different future you're going to live in. And so it's always kind of like that. So
Yeah.
the
But one of the
visionaries
benefits,
we need, the dreamers, because they can kind of imagine this and pretend like they're living in this type of thing, you know.
no, I agree totally. But there's some fundamentals, right? One of the things I was a fan of, I mean, it wasn't immensely successful, was what you call the initial coin offering. Right? So back in the day, 2017, you could do a white paper, you do a token raise, and bam, you're off and working. And yeah, 95% of those projects failed, but we also had some very important projects that came from it. But what that did, it liberated people to go from idea to startup and funding without having to go through the traditional systems that you do when you're doing a traditional startup. And you start combining that with the ability to have to be powered by AI, which can essentially allow you to do so much more with so much less now. I think if the financing is there and the tooling is there, maybe we'll start to see people able to change the world faster and in greater numbers than before.
I do think so, because I do think a lot of the Web3 tech, specifically around blockchain, you're seeing more of those use cases being used in emerging markets, because they have problems that are different than ours, that it makes a lot of sense for them. And trust is like, at the end of the day, the institutions, you can argue whichever direction you like, but in the West, we do have strong institutions that have a certain level of trust that allow the market to function for business. Is it perfect? No. Is there perhaps some other ways to go? But in some of these emerging markets, their institutional trust is zero. And the ones that can be trusted, you have to pay such a high fee to be in the game, because they can't trust you, that you don't even get to be in there. And this comes back to being unbanked, when you have to pay all these prices to get in. And so, like, some of this tech, I think, makes a lot of sense in the emerging markets. I'm pretty excited about it, because more and more of them are starting to realize you got to spend all your money on infrastructure if you want to have all these different things. And so I think we're going to see some of these ideas probably faster in these, like, maybe zones, we could call them, around the place. And if you're watching anything in Asia, I'm sure or if you've been there yourself, you've probably seen some of this already happening.
Oh, it's incredible. Because, as you're saying, they have no choice, right? This is how they're going to survive and prosper. So the adoption is quick because it makes an immediate impact. It's not a choice. It's nothing will do it. And yeah, I absolutely agree with you. You're starting to see a lot of adoption, a lot of creation also in these areas. Yeah, I think hopefully these areas will be a significant part of the new solutions that are springing up.
I definitely think so. I don't think we're going to see it here in Canada anytime soon. We tend to be a little bit like, we make stuff, but when it comes to sort of like mass market adoption, that's not really our style. I'm sure there's a lot of people who disagree with that statement, but I can just follow cell phones as a clear example of how long it took us to get on board with text messaging, how long it took us to do all these things. I mean, yeah, we made BlackBerry, and the messaging, was all popular, but it didn't start here, and the popularity of it didn't happen here until after the fact. And
Yeah, yeah,
it had already, like, we fought GSM for a long time here, trying to keep the CDMA tech alive. That didn't transition. It wasn't just like, aha, we should just do what Japan does, or any of these other groups. The world had already moved to GSM, and we were still fighting to keep CDMA between different telcos. Um,
yeah. The telecoms environment in Canada is interesting because you have oligopoly, right? So I think the market share of the leaders are fairly stable. So there's no real pressure to innovate or take any risks, right?
no, there isn't, and we're the second highest for cellular prices. I believe Finland or something like that is number one, and we're like really close.
Oh,
But when you look at our population size, there's also no incentive for another telco to come in, even though we've made the rules a little bit easier for it. Um, so like it's just the nature of how things are here. It's just a large, wide geography and not enough people, and so you can justify high prices in general with that. Like with any oligopoly, like that's the whole
yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah. I mean, UK is not too different, apart from the big trend now is over the top players, so what we call the MVNO, MVNOs, and there's a lot of roaming sort of specialists picking up who will sell you data packages, etc. But largely, part of what you have is the whole network and paying for 5G licenses and yeah, in the
Well,
future 6G licenses, and trying to get recoup on that when the money's being made over the top. Right?
Well, I mean, that's what was used to justify a merger between, or an acquisition of another telco, which was technically illegal 10 years ago. But or not illegal, but anti-competitive, we'll call it that. So I don't know. I think that what we're good at is building technology companies, great talent, and then selling it or exporting it to other markets abroad or with partners, and then we'll adopt it after. That's
Yeah,
what we find time and time again.
definitely a lot of technology impact from Canada for sure.
And I would just say as a caveat, this is my opinion. I'm sure most people are going to disagree with with this statement. Um, but since we're coming up close to the top of the hour here, I thought I would just um, move to a couple concluding questions. So the first one would be on the industry. So if we look, maybe because of AI, I should be doing things in 5 year increments. I don't know. I was going to say 10 years from now, but maybe it's five. So maybe we should go with the special number 2029. That's
Ah, okay. Not 2030. 2030 is the one.
that's when we're supposed to have the I forget what it's called when AI wakes up.
Yeah,
2029.
general intelligence. Yeah.
The singularity. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. So let's go with about a 5 year time frame. Um, where do you see blockchain's role, and like where's the direction? Do you think it's going to go quietly into the night, become ubiquitous, insignificant? You choose your futurist hat as to where you see it.
I see blockchain as the next layer of the internet, right? Providing yeah, and dynamic interoperability, providing the means to transact dynamically in ways that you can't do now, right? So I'm seeing blockchain as part of this new digital infrastructure for this new digital world, which will take the online that we know now to a different level. So I don't think it's going to go into the night, but I do think it will be more converged with with the other technologies that we have.
Do you think it'll be like cloud? Like we don't talk about cloud. We don't have to say I have a cloud company or I have a cloud this. It's kind of just become part of given.
I think so because we're moving to a new way to interact, right, with applications. So at the moment, we're in the mobile era, right, where we interact with applications via our mobile phones, and we're progressing towards the agent architecture, right, where you'll start to interact with things via agents, who will be your interface into these applications. And for that reason, blockchain becomes more infrastructure, right? Becomes more part of the infrastructure, and the application starts becoming agents, right? Not mobile phone applications. And when you look at that, I mean, everything is going to be at the application, or the interface will be at the application layer, and then the infrastructure layer will have things like cloud and blockchain, and metaverse technologies, banking technologies, fintech technologies, which are converged, and the applications can pick them as they need to. So I think yes, it will become part of the background, and we shouldn't really be talking about, this blockchain has this consensus protocol and it has this transaction per second and all. I don't think people care, right? What people care about is, they can have this token, and they can stake it, they can transact it, they can use it as a utility, and it works, right?
It should
Um,
be described in terms of either outcomes or the problem it's solving, because that's
exactly,
the
exactly. So yeah, I don't believe it's going anywhere, but I believe its success will be when it's invisible.
yeah, I agree with that statement. So now some fun questions. Now that we've gotten sort of the business fun out of the way. So, um, are you currently reading anything or listening to any interesting podcasts? Not everyone on here has time to read, so
No, so at the moment, I'm not reading any book as such, but I am listening to a lot of podcasts at the moment. So one of them is Bankless, which is one of my favorites. I listen to that one a lot, um, and I listen to quite a few broad podcasts. But I'm not. I tend to be more of a YouTube guy now, right? I'm a game guy. I'm a gaming guy. I'm a YouTube guy. So I'm not a reading guy at the moment. But that's
okay,
something I'm
then we
kind
can
of
we can say, okay, what is the game that has occupying your time at the moment?
Fortnite.
Okay, awesome. Uh, for the next one um, is there any tech tool or productivity hack that you use that you can't live with? That is kind of your go-to now. Please don't say ChatGPT.
No,
If you have something
so
else.
I actually like Grok, right? So
Okay.
maybe unpopular. I actually am pretty impressed with what we're getting from Grok. But now, 'cause I like to spin up a lot of just start playing with front ends on top of public APIs you can get now. So I've recently started using Replit a lot, and I'm finding that pretty impressive to be able to spit up something really quickly and see how it works.
Okay, sorry, say that again. What is it?
Replit,
Okay.
R-E, yeah, P-L-I-T. It's an AI coding tool, really impressive. So I think, yeah, my go-tos now would be Grok and Replit.
Okay, cool. Um, do you have any health or wellness techniques to kind of keep it all together while you're building all these companies
Yeah,
and doing all these talks? And
yeah. Health is everything, right? Health is absolutely everything. So I do intermittent fasting. So I don't know how popular that is in Canada, but I will generally fast 18 hours a day, 7 days a week.
yeah, it's I think that's a thing here. At least I don't know. It is for me in my circle of people, and I range kind of around the 16 hours.
Yeah. The
That
only
makes
thing is, I drink the black coffee. So if black coffee isn't allowed, then I'm probably doing 16 hours, 15 hours. If black coffee is allowed and it doesn't count, then I'm doing 18 hours.
Oh, if black coffee doesn't count, then I don't intermittent fast. Like that's
Okay, we're the same. We're the same.
If
Yeah,
that
yeah,
doesn't count, then no. Then definitely I should stop telling people I intermittent.
yeah, yeah. So I'm big into the intermittent fasting. Also, I've discovered blending as well. So I tend to do like blends with whole lemons, turmeric, garlic, ginger, that type of thing. So I'm really into that. Pomegranates. So I take health pretty seriously. I go to the gym 5, 6 times a week, and I feel really good for it because I believe that the fitter you are physically, the more mentally agile you are, which is absolutely critical. I mean, as creative people, it's about finding that creative window where you can see things, right? Where you can step out of the muddle of everything that's happening, and actually envision your version of the future and see things in perspective. So it's absolutely critical that you do everything possible to be physically fit and to give your mind the ability to breathe, right, and see things.
Oh yeah, no, that's awesome. Because like at least how I try to do my fitness is to kind of get out of the tunnel. Like if you're constantly in it and working, all you can see is just like here, and then once you get out of the tunnel, you do something else, or your concentration's taken away. Sometimes you get some good ideas that come from it as well. So that's fantastic. And then the last question is looking back on your experience, what advice would you offer to your younger self or to an aspiring entrepreneur?
I think two things. So number one, don't believe anything is impossible. Right? That would be the number one thing. Don't. A lot of the systems we have around us limit us, right? They're designed to keep you in a position, right? Employment is designed to keep you in position. Financial structures are designed to keep you into position, right? Even peer groups are designed to keep you in position. And I think as long as you accept that, you'll never move out of your position, right? And discover your potential. So there's many people who are born who have ideas that seem absolutely crazy, that seem unattainable, that have visions that seem unattainable or crazy. But actually, we are in the age now where the impossible can be possible, right? Not only in terms of finance, but in terms of technical enablement. So believe, right? That's the first thing. Believe, have confidence in yourself. Would be the first one. I think the second one I would say is um, just travel, right? Just come out of your comfort zone. Nothing happens if you don't move. As soon as you move, resources can come to you, right? Things can happen. So the other thing I'd say is, don't stay at home, in front of the television or in front of your computer. Go out, meet people, right? Do things, go to conferences, listen to podcasts. And what you find is that your brain doesn't come up with things on its own, right? It needs fuel, just like a car needs fuel, your brain needs fuel. So you need to go to different people, different environments, get different ideas, read different things, consume different podcasts. And your brain will pull all of that together with your information and your vision to make something. So that's the second thing I'd say. And I think the third thing I would say is, don't buy into, this sort of mentality that you have to, um, you know, do things at all costs, right? That you have to tread on people. What I've learned, and this is advice I've picked up, is the same people that you pass on your way up, you'll see on your way down, right? So it's about having some integrity in everything you do, and having some morals in everything you do. And I believe that helps build trust in you, your brand, which is the currency you'll use through life. Right? So those are my sort of three things I'm picking up, apart from the health stuff and education, of course.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you for doing the podcast today, David.
My
And
pleasure. My
if
pleasure.
you have any upcoming events you're speaking at that you would like to let the audience know about, or where they can follow you, or if you have another book out or anything like that, this would be the time to share that information.
Yeah. Yes. I'll repeat again. My book, The Business of the Metaverse, published by Kogan Page. A lot of my ideas, a lot of what I'm talking about, you'll be able to find detailed accounts of in the book. I'll be speaking at Consensus. I'm speaking at East Bucharest. I'm speaking at Asia Web3 in Hong Kong. So there's a number of events I'm speaking. I normally will put, I can't name all of them, there's quite a few of them, but I normally will put them on my LinkedIn page, so you can follow me if you look for David Palmer Pairpoint, David Palmer Web3, David Palmer Metaverse. You'll find me on LinkedIn and follow me there. And on Twitter, I'm Metaverse Biz. So you'll find me there. Okay.
All right, perfect. Thanks.
Thank you.
You can find information about the Candid Capital Podcast on the website, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Episodes can be found on Spotify and other podcast platforms. A quick reminder that this is infotainment and is not intended to be professional advice, malicious, or hateful. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not represent those of employers, partners, and their subsequent connected private and public associations or organizations.
We candid, I hope you understand it. Your business growth, we planned it, yeah. This ain't for show, we stamped it, yeah. No FOMO, everyone come join, no solo. This all factual, from me to you, this Candid Capital.